Hey, good afternoon, everyone. As always, we'll give everyone a few minutes to filter in. And as always, you can ask a question in Q&A in the chat, or just use the raise hand function. And we will go ahead and answer your questions. We don't have a pre-submitted question, but we do have a question I need to answer still for someone. So if we don't have any questions out of the gate, I'll start with how to architect a report of assignments using hierarchy view. So you can see all of the assignments inside of a folder in some collapsible way. Excuse me. I hope everyone had a chance to see Dune. If you haven't, you should see it. It's a awesome movie. I'm not a paid spokesperson. Okay. David's got a question here. I'm gonna paste your stuff in the chat here. All right, I'm trying to create a report where I have a couple of complexities. I have things in an external database that I want to call at runtime, but I am keeping and tracking the assignments and decisions. I need them to be actionable. So basically create a container to hold an assignment object combined with the object that I'm bringing in. I've overridden the action context as an assignment using the assignment ID. How can I manipulate the action, manipulate what actions are visible, or create custom user actions? Okay, so
does that make any sense whatsoever?
I think so, David. Have you looked at using external entities at all? Are you familiar with that concept?
No, I've not. I mean, we have our external database, and we have basically steps that ping a service that return all that stuff to us because
okay.
I guess I want that external database to be the master of record. I don't want those things persisting in the decisions
exactly
because I don't want to get a mismatch anywhere.
Right, exactly. So we have a concept called external entities, and in fact, I believe we added it for your org ages ago. Believe it or not. I'll walk you through this, but external entities are a way to create an entity structure that lives, whose data doesn't live in decisions, it can live anywhere. And then that means that you can create action context menus with flows and forms that read or write from external data only.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So does it sound like what you are after here?
Yeah, let me kind of rephrase that the way my simple brain understands it. So basically, like usually if you were going to create a user action, you would have to create an entity, for example, and that would have to persist in decisions, right? That external entity basically allows you to do that, but with more like a container where you're just defining the shape of the object and it's not actually bringing that stuff.
Yeah, correct. I can bang one together here really quick if you'd like to see what that looks like.
Yeah, if you don't mind, if other people.
No, not a problem. It's pretty straightforward. This is a cool concept that not many people know about. So let me just get a space to work at here. And we don't have any other questions right now, so should only take a moment to get together. All right, so I'm going to create external entities. Now, sometimes you might not even need the data to live somewhere else, but you need to have like a completely custom action context, even if the data lives internally, and this can let you do that. So I'm going to create a data type, click external entity, and I'll call this thing external entity example. I'm just going to give it 2 properties as always, str1, str2. Now for this example, I'm going to connect to my local database as if it's external. So you'll just have to sort of like keep that in mind. So you're going to create I'm going to connect to my external database integration. I'm going to add a table. I'm just going to use local connection, but again, I would use, this is actually, it being local doesn't change the thing here. I'm going to connect to the entity account table.
If I needed to create a custom connect, is that the same way as like the raw SQL step works, that I can define a custom connection and the connection string to it if I needed to?
Oh, sure. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, these could be API calls. These could be running. You'll see here in a minute, like the actual fetching is all done in a flow. I'm
Oh,
just
okay.
going to use my external entity connection, which is to my local, to as a sort of an analog of that. But it is not important. It being a database connection isn't important to the example. I guess it
I
can be
see.
anything.
Okay, I gotcha. I gotcha.
So I get this, like you'd be familiar with a configuration folder
Yeah.
in decisions, but you'll notice I get a bunch of preset flows here. And in these flows, I get ID. I tell them what the ID property is. I fetch a single one. I fetch all of them. I delete one. I can save and I can search. So if I connect all, if I plumb in all of these flows, which we'll see in a minute, I can then get a entity interface basically whose data, which will appear to live in decisions for the end user's perspective, because I'll see a report, maybe running a query or data source or something, right? And then I'll have right click menus that can show me forms. Yet at the end of the day, they will read from and write their data to some external data store. So first things first is get by ID. This is a really kind of odd way to use a flow, but it just says this flow. And again, this is all in our external entities document for further review.
Okay.
I'm just going to say what the ID field is. And I did this wrong, so I'm going to save this. I'm going to edit my external entity, and I'm just going to add a property called account ID to this thing. This is a really neat but very underutilized function in our tool. So I'm going to go to get by ID, and I'm going to say the ID of this field is, I'm going to select from flow, expand entity is the account ID. I'm actually using the flow interface to define the primary key of the entity.
Yeah.
That's really the thing I'm doing here. And I'm going to save and close this. I'm then going to go to the fetch step. And now what I'm going to do is, you'll notice is I'm going to go find that database integration I created. So integration, database, local connection, entity account, and I'm going to get by ID here. So again, this could be any step. I'm just going to use a database connection step here. And I'm going to pass the account ID in, which will come in as the ID property of my flow. It gets this automatically. And then what I get is I'm going to do build data on my entity. So here's my external entity type, named entity. And if I do build data, I can map in the fields here from what I get back from this step. So this is where I'm actually going to map from whatever I'm connecting, whatever I'm calling from, to the object model that decisions wants to know about.
I see.
So here's my result data. I'll pass account ID, and I'm just going to do first name and last name as my string 1 and string 2 respectively. Again, for those of you that haven't seen it yet, this is the current and updated version of our mapping editor in 7.7. If it looks different, we've made some enhancements there for you recently. Okay, so this is set up now. I could also go to fetch all. I'll just do this one really quickly. And I will do integration, database, local connection, entity account, and I'll search get all. I'll find a list mapping step so I can do the mapping from one type to the other. And I'll sequence these things up. So get all element count will be ignore. And then list mapping step, my input will be my account result. My output type will be my external entity something. External entity example, that's the one I just created. And then this is just a normal list mapping step. I'll come to the item mapping editor. I'll do build data. I'll find my underscore input, and I'll just do the same thing. This is just going to handle the whole list for me. Last name into string 2 and first name. In fact, that's bear with me just a moment. I'm just gonna write a note down to myself. Okay. And I'm then going to go take the output of list mapping step and pass it to my entity here. Okay, great. So now I can fetch, or I can fetch by, or I can get all. And I'm going to go build a report. So if I come to external entities, I'm going to create a report. Now I'm going to build a report using my table data source, not my external entity directly. So this will be, like an external data report, example 1. And then I'm going to come to my data source, add common local connection entity account. And I'm just going to add entity name, and I'll do first name, and I'll do last name. Okay. I forgot I created an account for my sister at some point while I was testing things. And then if I run this report, it will have no actions. If I right click anywhere, it will have no actions. So what I can then do is come to my report, open up actions, select override action context, and here I can find if I scroll over, find my external entity example, which is here, external entity example. I can specify the ID context from my my report here, and then I can run this report. And now I should have no action still, but I get the action context menu. So what I'll then do, did it save that? Yes, it did. Wonderful. Okay. And then what I'm going to do is, just like I would, now that I haven't done any custom work yet, right? I've only been setting up the plumbing and such. So now I have a user action. I'm going to create a user action called update, update personal information, and create this. I'm going to dump a form in here. On that form, I'm going to put 2 text boxes. This will be called F name. This will be L name, and put a button. As always, my forms are going to be ugly. I'm then going to go find I'm going to go integration, database, local connection, entity account, and I'll just do update. I'm going to run an update query here. So on the updated objects, I know this is 1. I'll do build array. I will say build data. Actually, let me do a selective update, not update here. I don't want to map everything in. So here's selective update. I'll find the account ID. Account ID I'll get from select value, entity account ID. And then I will find my first name and last name. So first name, select from flow, will be F name, and L name, our last name, will be select from flow, L name. And then I will map in my inputs. Oops, wrong button. Here, I'll expand entity, and I'll pass string 1 into first name and string 2 into last name. And I will save this, come back to my report, right click, run my report. Now click update personal information, and I'll put a 1 on Megan's name and refresh. And now I'll have updated the data in that external database connection, quote unquote, using a right click context menu launched from a decisions report.
Okay, I see. I guess my question about that would be, if I have like it's running through an approval and I've created an assignment for this thing in decisions, how do I marry up the existing assignment with I guess a particular row from my external entity when I bring that in, if that makes any sense?
You could save off
like if I
some
needed
data
them
into
for that
the assignment.
Like for that right click action, if I needed it to be like an approve or disapprove on the actual decisions assignment that was created.
Well, you'd have to create a link somewhere. So like, does the external data set have the assignment ID in decisions in any way?
I I think what we're actually doing is we're writing to the type column
Okay,
on the
sure.
assignment and decisions. And
Hmm.
then we have like that type basically holds that type column holds a string of various
Yeah.
things. And we have a way to parse that out to be able to grab the ID
Okay.
of the thing in the other database.
Well, another example would be to extend your assignment. So if I I'm going to create a data type configuration extension and add entity actions in configuration and then find assignment here. And there's assignment. So I can create an assignment configuration. So if I build a flow called assignment extension example, and then I'll put a form on here that'll be assigned. I'm just going to pick the same form I just built. That's the form itself doesn't matter. I'll change this to assigned. Set it up to be assigned. Now that I have an assignment extension, if I select this and I click assignment setup, I should see in here. Where do we show it at now? Just a moment. Where do I see this at? Assignment extension example. Edit. Did we move this? Oh, no. Where is it at? Advanced. What am I missing? I don't need a restart, do I? Let me just try restarting really quick, just a moment. All right, so let me check here. Where is assignment? Where does this live at? All right, okay, how about this then? I'm not gonna use an assignment extension. What I could create is just a normal configuration folder. I can add my own custom actions to an assignment, David. I'll create data types integration, configuration extension, and add a entity. Oh, you know what? I'm sorry. I didn't create an assignment extension. I just created a configuration folder. Oh, sorry. I didn't extend anything. So the thing I was looking for didn't exist. I can extend existing or default objects like assignments by creating a configuration folder for them. So if I click user actions and create a user action here called user action flow 1, I can have this flow run. This flow can have access to the assignment type itself. If I map it, I can map in the assignment type property. So entity assignment type to the subject of this pop-up will probably be null. But let's run the flow I just created here. Assignment extension example, I'll give it an assignment type, which is here, assignment type description. And then I'm gonna go ahead and run this flow. I'm not going to fill it in. I'm going to go to my inbox, sort by start date, sort by my start date here, which will be start date descending. Okay, so there's the one from today I just created, 12/21. If I right click it, I should have user action flow 1. If I click that, I should get a pop-up given the flow I just made, which shows me that assignment type. So now I have an action flow that has the assignment type available to it.
I see.
And I can just write visibility rules. So here, for example, if I come back to my inbox and I right click on this row, these both have user action flow 1. If I go to the assignment configuration rule flow, the configuration folder, find and create an action visibility rule, I'll say hide if no assignment type. And then what I'm going to do is go and create an entity action. I'll say if the action dot name contains, I don't know what I named that thing, so I'll just say user. And the assignment itself, the assignment type is null or is empty. So if the assignment type's empty and the action name is user, hide that action. So this might be the inverse of what you're after. I always write these backwards the first time. So if I come here, I have user action flow 1 here. I have user action flow 1 there. I shouldn't be doing a bad job today. If the action name contains user and the any type is empty. Maybe it's, what if I just say contains ASDF for now? Come back to my inbox. No user action rule there, but here it'll probably have it, user action flow 1.
And
So
I
you
should
can
be able to use those visibility rules to be able to not display the, I guess, the other system things on there too, right?
absolutely, yeah. That's primarily how they get used, is to hide all of the other stuff that you don't want to be shown.
Gotcha. Okay.
But I think the big takeaway there is you can create configuration folders for custom types that can, for our out of the box types that can be extended and have action visibility rules applied to them in the same way you can a custom type.
Okay. So all I need to do is basically do the external entity for what I'm doing, define the shape of that object, and then in there marry up that to the assignment, and then an assignment configuration extension like that, and then put those user actions that I want in there in that configuration folder, hide the other default ones, and then that should theoretically work, right?
Yep, correct.
I see. Okay. I think that may be way easier than the path I was going down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so you can write, yeah, that sounds like probably what you want. And then in that action, in that rule or that flow, you just write your data to the database. You show a form, do your update or insert to your external database here. And that way, or, have it. I mean, there's no reason you can't even hide the actual default assignment action name itself, right? And have only a custom set of actions and just use the assignment object as like an audit object in a sense, or a tracking, just to know if it's alive or not. The user never even has to see a decisions form. And this is like a decisions assigned form, I should say it that way.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, hopefully that helps. Any other questions about that?
Definitely. I think I got it. Thanks so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Okay, who else has got questions today? Again, if you're interested in the things I was walking through at the beginning of that call, those are external entities or configuration extensions is probably the title here. Yeah, or configuration extensions is the name of the document here. All right, Josh, I got a question here. Is there a way right, Josh, you can speak. Is there a way for all validation on a user control? Is there a way for all validation on a user control to be ignored if a certain button is pressed? Interesting question. Can you help me understand exactly what you mean there? Like, where's the button at? Is it on the parent form or is it on the user control itself? Let's see, Josh, are you able to come off mute and give me some additional information about your ask here? I'm gonna create a form. On that form, I'm gonna put a user control button, and then I'm going to create the user control. Okay. And I'm gonna put that form in a flow. Okay. I'm not sure if Josh is maybe having some problem with your audio. So let's build a user control here with a validation. So I'm going to put a label and a text box here. It will be, I'll put it as required. This will be, I'll just call this first name. And here, if I save this, so there's first name. If I debug this, so for those of you that aren't familiar, a user control, it allows us to have a reusable piece of form that we can share amongst many different forms. So if you have like a recurring header or some sort of like address component or something, you can do that. So if I click submit, it's going to throw a validation that name must be specified. So is the question, I wonder, I'm just going to have to, Josh, if you can't get your audio to work, I'll just assume a bit here. I'm going to put let's do, how about this? I bet I can do this with a visibility rule. So I'm going to put a checkbox here. And I'm going to make this checkbox hidden. I'm going to say it is not visible. I'll set this checkbox name to be ignore all validations. I'm going to set my text box here from required to optional. What's wrong with you? This will also be optional. Then what I'm going to do is find an event button, and I'll put this here. I'll name this thing ignore all validations. Okay, then I'm going to come here. Again, I'm on 7, so I'm going to do this in the old style of using a data flow. Actually, I should do this in the new way, shouldn't I? Yeah, I'm going to do this in the old way, just because I'm more familiar with that right now. I'm going to put a data flow in called set checkbox value, set checkbox to true. I'll create one. I'll create a data flow here. And the only thing this flow is going to do is pass out a checkbox value of type Boolean. And I'll just set it to a constant here. Okay, I'll go ahead and save this. Click update inputs, and then I'm going to steal the data name here. I'm going to have this trigger on the event button click and not run at startup and not be blocking. I'll come to checkbox and replace the data name. And then I can write a visibility rule. So I'll come back here to legacy and I'll write I'm gonna write a validation rule. And I'll say, validate user control. I will then use a rule. I'll pick or create a rule, create one. Yes, create, set my input data, and my input data will be checkbox, value, and text box value. Checkbox will be a Boolean. And okay. Then what I'm going to do is add an either or group. And I'm going to remove the top. So I'm going to say if either the checkbox value is true or the text box value is not empty. Go ahead and save and close. Update my inputs. Then I need to map in my inputs. So this is form component. And this will get from the checkbox. And this is form component. And this will get it from the text box. And I will run on all outcomes and I will trigger, yes, apply it to the text box control. All right, I think that is right, but it will probably not work the first time. So I'll save this and debug. So again, I know if I click submit, that shouldn't work. So false is not empty. The text box is definitely empty. False is empty. Did it not get mapped in correctly? Set this to null. Debug. So text box value false. I think I mapped the wrong thing into the text box here. Let me check that again. Let me edit my user control. Let me look at my validation rule here. Look at what I mapped in. Yes, I mapped the checkbox value into the text box. Okay. That would explain why I was seeing false there in the debugger. Back out and debug. So if I submit this, it will fail. And then if I click ignore all validations and submit, it'll pass. So Josh, hopefully that gets you some information about what you're asking for there. So again, just to walk back through that, we have a user control, which is this piece on the form, and we can allow users we can validate the individual inputs or click a button that would allow your users to ignore all validations. And this could be on the parent or the parent form, which would be the bigger form, or on the user control directly. Doesn't, I don't think it matters. So, yep. I'll go ahead and Josh, if you have any questions about that after we post the recordings, just let us know. Who else has got questions? Okay, so I'll jump into the question I said I was going to answer for someone, which is about assignment using hierarchies, reports with assignments. So let me create a new space here. This will be called hierarchy reports with folders and assignments. All right, and I am going to, so I created an assignment here. I've got some assignments. So let me get myself set up here, create a quick flow to create a process folder and an assignment. So set up process folder and show form. Oops. right, set a process folder. I'll put it in the current folder. Leave everything else. I'll use some extension data type here. Sure, loan application, build data. I'll put constant text in for my descriptions and folder name. I'll then move to an assigned form. I'll use one of the forms I just created. That user control form is fine. Assign to administrators. And here I'll put constants for the assignment name and assignment action name again, and run this. And I will then run that flow, and it should give me a new process folder, which we can see here, WF09. Now I'm going to create a report, which would be nest assignments in folders. So if I duplicate my tab, we should know that if I look inside of this folder, I can see I have an assignment inside of the folder itself. If I want to, I can use process data view and see the assignment here in the folder. So what this customer is after is a report of assignments. Now, normally I'd write an assignment. I click assignment data source. I'd say entity name, and I would say like state and created on date, or maybe all assignments created, created by, created on date. And then I might add a folder filter. So I'll say in folders, I'll say for a specific folder, and I'll pick the folder, which would be hierarchy reports. It'll show me one. Nope, that's the wrong. Oh, for folder. Yeah, so I'll say in folder, for folder and subfolders, and I'll pick the hierarchy reports, and it'll show me that one. So this is very much what we might see for a normal assignment report. Let me run this flow again to have two of these. So if I come back into my report, I'll have two of these now. Now, what I can do is I can join the containing folder if I want the process data and the assignment data mixed together. So I can click in folders, click join containing folder. Now that I have that, I have some new properties all starting with in. So I could have in entity name. And I can move this to the left. And this makes it helpful to see, okay, here's the process folder name, here's the assignment name, and here's the state. I could say like in assignment state. So if I run this, this is very much a default decisions report. So what they want is they'll have multiple assignments in each folder, and they'd like you to have a list of all of the open tasks and be able to expand out each of them, similar to what we can do on the profiler. So if I come to system administration, system tools, profiler, you see I have a hierarchy report here that allows me to drill in to the control. So what I want to try, but I don't know if I can, is use hierarchy report to get something similar to that for this review. So hierarchy is a view. I'll come over here to hierarchical view. Now here is where we're going to get lost. So I'm going to add folder. I'm going to add entity folder ID, which is the parent folder ID. Yes, I understand. Entity folder ID, that's the parent folder ID of the assignment. And in folder ID, which is the ID of the parent. Those should be the same thing. I'm going to save this. So on parent field, I'm going to find entity folder ID. No, on parent folder, I'm going to find in folder ID, and child, I'm going to do entity folder ID. And run this report and see. So that's our default view. Nothing in our hierarchy view. Anything? There? No. Let me get rid of all assignments. I know I can get this to work. Let me switch these. Parent folder ID will be entity folder ID. Child folder ID will be in folder ID. Stink. Anyone on the panelists know how to do this by chance? I know we can do this. Now, let me try this with a SQL query. Create a database integration, add a query. And I will say select star from entity header data where do I need it to be the same data type here? Where entity type short name type short name in. I'll do one as assignment, one as folder. Is those folders and assignments? How do I get the IDs for the folders and the assignments? Maybe I don't care. Let's try this. So I only want entity name, select entity name, entity folder, ID, and ID. This will be folders and assignments. All right, let me create a new report. Find that query, common local connection. So hard to read. Folders and assignments. ID, entity name, entity folder ID. And then let me try hierarchy report now. Parent folder ID is ID, child field is entity folder ID. There we go. And run this report. And how about entity name? And I'll say field filters, entity name starts with a bracket. Report. Hold on. I need to type short name. Sorry, everyone, I'm bumbling through this a bit. What's the name of the game these days? I guess any type short name. Okay. Entity type short name is flow1. Let me change my query here. So it's an assignment, or it's flow1, which I think it's getting its type name because it's not set. There's that. And there is hierarchy, but there's nothing inside of it. There's 9 and 10. There's 9 and 10 and 4. 9 and 10 both have assignments inside. $28. Review, ASDF. This should work. Let me edit my flow. Put a branch step. Maybe it's because there's not enough records. Path 1. 2. Should have 2 assignments now. One more report. Okay, I guess I'm gonna stop futzing around with this. Anybody have any other questions while I pause on this failed attempt? Hierarchy is in 6 as well. Yes. And again, if we look at the profiler, you can see what it looks like. You can have this nested piece. Now, it looks like it requires that it be the same data source. So if like you have like folders inside of folders, you can get like a view similar to we have in the folder tree. But yes, this is in 6. It's in 6. I believe this is in all versions of 6. I'm not that certain. I know it's in sort of middling to current version of 6 for sure. The hierarchy view is not in 7. Excuse me, not in 5. So it's been around for a while, but not since the beginning of time. How can I, okay, here's a great question. How can I change a static text in a text box through a flow? Yeah, sure, let's do that. That I can do, unlike the thing I just tried to do. So static text box in flow. And I will let you, Gerardo. Let me, oh yeah, you can, let me get set up here. You can let us know the problem you're working on while I get us set up here. So let's create a new form here. On that form, we'll put a text box. I'll call it new text. And we'll put a button. Okay, and so our example will be, why don't we set this to some kind of static text here. So this will be, I'll put this to hello world. And if we debug this, we should see our form with hello world there. So the question is, how can I make that hello world text change through a flow after the form is loaded? Or is it, how can I set the default text through the flow that's calling the form? If you'd like, you can go off mute and help us understand a little better the question that you're asking. Or I'll just run with it like we did for Josh's question. So if the question is, so this is already an example of me passing the text into the text box from the flow calling the form directly. So if I want this more dynamic, I'm going to do this with an active form flow in 7. So I can create an active form flow here, add, I'll call this update text box value. And I'm going to create my flow here. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put a create data step here. And data to create, I'm going to say text box string will be my value name. And then I'm going to come here to form rules. And I'm going to use a set control value step here. Actually, I don't need to use this. I'm just going to use set control value here. Now, for those of you that are on a 7, this is an active form flow, which is our replacement for data flows, visibility rules, and validation rules altogether. So I'm going to use build data on my set form control rule. That's not what I want. Show control, clear, get control value, get form data value. Stink. I need to get better at using these. Form data, new text box is form control data, enabled invisible, set control value, show control, disable, clear, enable multiple exit form, get value. Oh, there it is. So what I'll do is take in the value of that form. Sorry, I'm bumbling around a bit here. I'm not that familiar with these new active form flows yet. So I'm in an active form flow, and I've mapped in the form data new text box through select flow, which if you look at is form data. And on form data, it shows me all of the controls, the bottom bar, which is a grid, the button, contents, and then all of my controls or all my components. I have one component on the form, which is my text box. I can select that. When I do, on set control value, it gives me this. And what I'm going to do is a text merge plane, and I'm going to take in form data, new text box value, and I'm going to just add plus 1, 2, 3 to the end of it. Save this. And then I'm going to run, not at startup, I want to trigger this. So I'm going to add an event button. So I'll come here, search for event, add an event button, come back to my active form flow here and edit it. I can then select the event button. On click will be my trigger and click OK. Now, if I've done this right, I can debug hello world and I click raise event. I can add plus 1, 2, 3 to it using that active form flow behavior. And then if I look on the left-hand side, I can actually see that active form flow run, and I can view its inputs and outputs, and I can inform that it's doing what we expect it to. For those of you that aren't on 7 yet, these active form flows are really powerful and replace, as you can see, replace or depreciate, but don't replace our data flows. So if you look here, this is an active form flow, and I can look at data flows, visibility rules, validation rules, and outcome rules. You can do all of those behaviors using the workflow engine inside of an active form flow in V7. And that's going to be our recommended approach going forward, as it's much easier to see what's happening. Yeah, you bet. Happy to help. Okay, I think that's everything. Looks like I still have some work to do to figure out this assignment piece for the customer that asked me that question. We will see you guys tomorrow. Thanks for your time today. Hopefully this was helpful, and talk to you tomorrow. Thanks, everyone.